All right, so what are some of the signs of narcissist abuse syndrome? Number one, a person that has a narcissistic father may start to question their sanity. This is where neuro-linguistic programming comes in. There are some narcissistic fathers that unconsciously use neuro-linguistic programming. Sometimes it's in the form of gaslighting techniques. They may speak to their children in a particular way. We talked about communication styles. Their communication style may be dominant. So when they speak to their children, it's not really that they're speaking to their children. They may be speaking at their children. They may name call. They may put the children down. So some narcissistic fathers unconsciously do this. But one sign of narcissist abuse syndrome is when he or she grows up. So now they are an adult of a narcissistic father, and they may start to question their sanity, especially after long periods of time or years and years of being gaslit. They start to doubt. They start to not trust themselves. And sometimes it's hard to trust dad when trust hasn't been established. Speaking of mistrust, that's a second sign of narcissist abuse syndrome. A person may begin to mistrust people who have already proven to be trustworthy. When narcissistic fathers don't establish trust with their children, by the time that they're adults, well, they tend to mistrust everybody. So even people who are healthy, even people who have already proven to be trustworthy, sometimes, unfortunately, the adult children of narcissistic fathers, they don't trust people who have already shown themselves or have demonstrated that they are trustworthy. It's hard to trust other people in the family who really can support him or her. Another sign of narcissist abuse syndrome is to feel abandoned, okay? Not just from the father, but from everyone, okay? There may be feelings of abandonment. When they have a narcissistic father, and when they look at being exposed to that for years, especially if their father has been in their life since they were newborns, okay, since they were little children. This is years and years of being exposed to narcissistic abuse. So it's not surprising that there's issues of abandonment and trust. A person who has a narcissistic father may begin to feel worthless, or they don't feel like they deserve the best in life. Okay, they may even sabotage anything that's going well in their life unconsciously. Narcissistic fathers tend to downgrade their children's accomplishments if it doesn't concern them. Okay, a lot of narcissistic fathers, they tend to objectify their children. So any high achievements that reflects on him, he'll thumbs it up. But any hard work that their children do that doesn't have anything to do with him, he tends to not see it, or he tends to not give it any credit. He tends to be oblivious to it. So a lot of adult children of narcissistic fathers tend to not give themselves enough credit for their hard work, whether that's in the relationship or outside of it. Is that they tend to doubt their abilities to make good decisions for themselves. They tend to lack confidence in their ability to problem solve. This is why in a lot of my videos, one of my tools is to become your best problem solver. Not your only problem solver, but your best problem solver. And that takes some practice to get to that level. That takes practice to get to that level in your support base. Okay, but the support base is vital, especially if you have a narcissistic father that currently is in your life. You have to have that contrast. Compare your relationship with your father to the relationships that you have with other people. The contrast provides two things: harmony and peace of mind. A lot of adult children of narcissistic fathers, when they have narcissist abuse syndrome, they tend to disconnect or detach from their needs and desires in all of their relationships, not just the relationship with their father. When their father tends to be the focal point of their life, he or she, they become overly concerned with how to please their father. Narcissistic fathers tend to continue to be supplied when their children go way out of their way to make him the center or the focal of their life. So that tends to spill over into the rest of their life and all of their other relationships with other people. This is also why it is so important to have the contrast. It is very important to have that support base. This way you can compare like apples to oranges. You know, the oranges can be people that you have relationships with that may be quite positive and healthy. The apple could be the relationship you have with your narcissistic father that's leaving you feeling heavy, drained. You tend to carry the things that he projects onto you. That's very unhealthy, okay? When you have that as the focal point of your life, it's just not that good. So they're not able to give a cohesive narrative of what's going on with them. Somebody can come along and say, hey, you know, what's up? You seem to be preoccupied, or you seem to be stressed out or bothered about something. It is very hard for an adult child of a narcissistic father who has narcissist abuse syndrome or experiences narcissist abuse syndrome to sometimes give a cohesive narrative of what's actually going on inside of them, what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Those lines become blurred because they're so accustomed to making their narcissistic father the focal point of their life. They're trying to please him. So it's kind of like their father is living through them. The things that their narcissistic father has not resolved gets projected onto him or her. And it's like he's living through his children. It sounds eerie, I know, but I really want to give you all a clear snapshot of what narcissist abuse syndrome looks like. When a person is not able to really know, or they're not aware of what's going on inside of them, well, they disconnect from their own needs and their own desires. So, you know, it's easy to give in to what their narcissistic father wants because he's the focal point of their life. So whatever he wants, whatever he needs, an adult child of a narcissistic father can also become obsessed with pleasing their father. How can I make him feel better? A person may begin to psychoanalyze their father, which is something, believe it or not, it's not going to help him. He doesn't actually need that. He may influence a person to believe that that's what he needs or that's what he wants, but it's not, because it only enables him. It supplies his false self-image, or all of his false self-images. When a person begins to make their narcissistic father the focal point of their life, it is very easy to become not only addicted to that, but obsessed by it. It's easy for them to become obsessed with it. The narcissistic relationship with the narcissistic father becomes the focal point of their life, and before you know it, that tends to be their life. You know, and I hope that sobers some people up, because this is something that a lot of us are waking up to. This is something that more and more people are waking up to, which is a good thing. And that is when they make their parents, well, we're talking about narcissistic fathers today, but when we make narcissistic fathers the focal point of our life, that tends to take up all of our life. So you're walking around drained. You may be walking around drained. Some of us are walking around feeling spent, if not violated, by the narcissistic relationship with our fathers. But not only that, it tends to expand to the narcissistic family, the dysfunctional family. You know, so it tends to consume a person and takes its toll. It's just only a matter of time before that happens. People who have a narcissistic father may show signs of narcissistic syndrome because they tend to belittle their contributions, not only in the world, but in the relationship with their father, because their father is the focal point. Whatever he needs, whatever he wants, that becomes the mantra of their life. A person can be obsessed with the narcissistic abuse. A person can become obsessed with the narcissistic relationship with their father. They can become obsessed with trying to maintain whatever their dysfunctional role may be within their narcissistic family. If they have a narcissistic father, he's the head of the family. More than likely, he's heading the family, which probably is dysfunctional. Therefore, it's very easy to see how that family can become a narcissistic family. Okay, and if your father is the focal point of your life and he has pathological narcissism, well, it's very easy to get caught up in that. And before you know it, you'll be singing that song. That'll be your life mantra. Whatever dad wants, whatever dad needs, by all costs, by all means, or by any means necessary, it shall be done. And then you put yourself on the back burner. And if you have been scapegoated, if you have been tagged, or if you've been targeted by your narcissistic father to be the scapegoat, unconsciously, by addiction and obsession, possibly, you will be choosing or claiming scapegoat long into your adulthood. Sometimes you may even think that it's your idea because you're trying to please dad. You're trying to make dad happy. He's the focal point of your life. Your mantra, whatever dad wants, whatever dad needs, by any means necessary, it shall be done. Even if that means I take a back seat. Even if that means I'm sacrificing myself. This is one of the things that a scapegoat does. This is the purpose of a scapegoat. Okay, this is one of the purposes of a scapegoat. So then you're not living your life. You don't even know what you feel or what you think half the time when it comes to the relationship with your father, or even in a narcissistic family. When it comes down to having a relationship with a narcissistic father, it is very easy to not have a voice and not have an identity, because your father is the focal point of your life. Whatever he needs, whatever he wants, it shall be. So a person may have that mantra and be unconscious to how they continue to choose or claim the role of scapegoat, which is very dysfunctional. So even in the relationship with their father, we haven't even gotten to the narcissistic family yet. Just with their father, that interchange, they're claiming unconsciously the role of scapegoat, especially if he has selected or chosen or tagged them or targeted them to be scapegoat. Whatever dad needs, whatever dad wants, it shall be. And if a person is obsessed with the relationship with their narcissistic father, they can start making excuses for his actions. Just like sometimes, we've all seen those movies whereas the child may be cleaning up after the alcoholic parent, after they've had a night of binge drinking, the next day they hung over, and the child comes along or the teenager comes along and they're wiping up all the vomit and they're cleaning up all the mess. In a sense, those of us who have a narcissistic father, this is what we're doing, figuratively speaking. We're cleaning up after the mess. We're making excuses for his behavior. So that's cognitive dissonance. Sometimes that's denial. I tend to think that, cognitive dissonance is just the other side of the coin of denial, right? We believe what we want to believe. We tell ourselves his behavior is not a problem. So narcissist abuse syndrome is in full effect. So a lot of us experience it and we don't even know we're experiencing it. Okay, so again, when a person ignores and they tend to look away from their father's behavior, they make excuses for his behavior, his dysfunctional behavior, his narcissist behavior, pathological narcissism. See, when we start looking at, we start taking up for dad, we start defending him, which on one hand, yes, it's understandable because that's dad. But on the other, the person can easily become an enabler in that relationship. That's another dysfunctional role. Not only are they claiming scapegoat unconsciously, but they're unconsciously claiming an enabler. And some children are recruited as flying monkeys by the narcissistic father. That moves right on into another sign of narcissist abuse syndrome. They spin their wheels. Adult children sometimes, especially if they've been recruited from enabler to flying monkey, They spin their wheels trying to find out how they can serve their father. How can they gain his favor? That's another sign of narcissist abuse syndrome. Obsessively thinking about how you can service this person, how you can service your narcissistic father. How can you gain his favor? How can you be the golden child? Another sign of narcissist abuse syndrome. You may obsess over how to make him happy. That's impossible. You can't make anyone happy. But of course, a lot of us, when we look at our parents, they're God to us. Okay, they're gods to us. This is understanding, especially when we're little children. They're gods to us. So, adult children of narcissists, adult children of a narcissistic father, that switch doesn't get turned off just because they're 30, just because they're 40. You know, so they usually obsess on how to make the narcissistic father happy, idealizing the narcissistic father, idealizing not only the relationship with him, idealizing their father. Okay, so this is one that a lot of us have fallen into. We've fallen into that situation. It's a sunken place, nonetheless. Okay, figuratively speaking, a person is stagnant. They're in the sunken place when they're obsessing on how to make their father happy. They make their father the focal point of their life. So when we just think about the signs or symptoms of a cluster personality type, and then if it's our father, this goes double. You know, a lot of this stuff goes double because it is so easy to have a codependent relationship with dad, which makes it more of a sunken place. This makes it more, you know, it can cause a person to become stagnant in their life because their relationship with their father will spill over and overshadow other areas of their life because it's probably going to dominate the rest of their relationship. Because narcissistic dad, he wants all of the narcissist supply. He's not trying to share any of the narcissistic supply. So if you have relationships with other people, which again is very important, especially if they're a healthy relationship, because again, you want that contrast. Narcissistic father, you know, he's probably going to be threatened by that. So he may try to sabotage any positive relationships that you would have, because again, you want to please dad, right? And this goes for some of us. I really wanted to go over narcissist abuse syndrome because this is something that, again, a lot of us, it sneaks up on us if we have a narcissistic dad or we have a cluster B personality dad. It can sneak up on us. Narcissist abuse syndrome is like, again, it's like that drink that sneaks up on you. You drink it, it's all good at first, but bam, when it hits, it hits. A person can become so obsessed with having a relationship with their narcissistic father, they're spinning their wheels trying to figure out why he's the way he is. Why does he, you know, he not get it, right? So they're desperately trying to, they're not able to see how that narcissist relationship is affecting him or her. Adults of narcissistic fathers often put themselves on the back burner. They're scapegoat. They're like the scapegoat. They're like the sacrificial lamb. They're hurting. They're bleeding, but they're oblivious to it. Anything that the adult child of a narcissistic father may be thinking and feeling, it gets put on the back burner. So it's kind of like they numb out. Anything dad wants, anything dad needs, by all means or any means necessary, it shall be. And they're still wounded. They're still bleeding, figuratively speaking. They're still hurting, yet they don't attend to that. So even if they go to counseling, they don't go to counseling for themselves. They go to counseling to help dad, to try to figure dad out. Tool number 1, take steps to discontinue psychoanalyzing dad. Believe it or not, that's not what he needs. That's not going to save him. That's not going to rescue him. That's not going to fix him. That's not going to make him better. Okay? So tool number 1, discontinue psychoanalyzing your dad. Tool number 2, be mindful of the triggers that you may be experiencing when you interact with your dad. Sometimes he may say something. You may be 30 years old, but he may say something. The way he says it, there may be a facial expression, there may be the actual environment. You may be 30 years old, you moved out, right? But you may be at his house and something he says, something he does, takes you back to when you're 12. Because that's a moment that you remember, that's a highlightable moment. Something he said and did when you were 12 that really hurt you. And you never recovered from that. You're 30 now. You're at your dad's house. He says something, he does something, bam, you're 12 again. Be mindful of that. Tool number 3, practice personal boundaries. Okay? When it comes to dealing with your father, if you have chosen to continue to have an active relationship with him, this is imperative. Practice personal boundaries. Tool number 4, okay, we got an extra one today. Clear the fog. What does fog stand for? Fear, obligation, and guilt. Once you start to clear that fog, you can begin to refocus on your life. You can regain your identity and your voice. And if you don't feel like you've ever had either, you can gain both now. Okay? Just clear that fog. Fear, obligation, and guilt. When you're no longer anxious about pleasing your father, rescuing your father, making your father happy, then you're no longer fearful to live your life. Obligation. You don't feel like you're obligated to save your father. You don't feel like you're obligated to become his counselor, which is a sign of a codependent relationship is you're trying to rescue the other person. Codependent relationships are designed to be highly addictive. Okay, so you may be obsessed by the relationship that you have with your father. Guilt. You don't feel guilty if you choose not to have a relationship with your father, an active relationship. Clear up that guilt. You no longer feel guilty if you choose to live your life to the fullest. You choose to have relationships that are healthy outside of the relationship with your dad. You're not feeling guilty about it anymore. He cannot play on your emotions anymore. So when you clear up that fog, fear, obligation, and guilt, you're going to take off. You're going to soar. You're going to thrive forward. Not only will you survive narcissistic abuse, but you will thrive forward. And before you know it, you will be outshining narcissistic abuse syndrome. This is what we do here on Luminous Star. Welcome to the channel. I also want to go ahead and give a special shout out to my stars. Thank you guys and gals so much for your subscription. And of course, my new stars, welcome to Luminous Star channel. Our community is growing. This is very exciting. I also want to thank all of you for making this happen. Don't forget to check the description box below, post your comments, and of course, don't forget to like and or share. Again, I'm Luminous Star. Welcome to the channel. Stay tuned for more vlogs and videos.